Oh, get ready. I've been waiting to make this video for a very long time. Strap in, because I'm about to reveal the most powerful lifetime value tracking software you have ever seen. If you can show me something better that isn't a custom in-house piece of software built for a specific company that took tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars to make, I would be surprised and extremely impressed. Now, if you're serious about scaling your business and knowing your numbers, which we've all heard so many times, by the end of this video, you're going to be saying, finally, the software that I've been imagining should exist actually does. And it's something that I can actually understand and make informed scaling decisions from without needing to be a data rocket scientist. So if that sounds good to you, you're in the right place. So welcome to LTV Numbers. I'm Tyler Ryan, former NASA software engineer and creator of LTV Numbers. I used to be a data rocket scientist myself, but several years ago I wanted to start my own company, and that led me on this wild ride in the marketing space. I was really fortunate to learn marketing from some great mentors, so I've been trying to take what I've learned about marketing and combine it with my background and skills, because I know how to build the software that marketers like us need to build and scale our businesses. So that's what brought me here, trying to bring those two things together. So look, other analytics tools are not telling you what you really need to know to make informed decisions and scale responsibly. My hypothesis, which I have a lot of evidence to support after working with businesses on this problem for the last 2 years, is that lifetime value analysis is the most insightful, useful analysis for making responsible scaling decisions. But this is only true if you do LTV analysis the right way. And there are no analytics tools that do that. They say they can show LTV because it's a marketing buzzword, and they need to include it so they don't get left behind. But the functionality is clearly an afterthought. It's at best interesting, and at worst misleading and dangerous even. That's why I built LTV Numbers, to provide the best, most practical, and most useful LTV analysis ever made. A tool built around LTV from the ground up. Now you'll hear me use the word useful a lot, but it carries a lot of meaning. In the analytics world, we just don't think about what is useful enough. These other analytics tools are more concerned with their landing page, their marketing presentation, trying to build something that looks like a good sales pitch, than worry about what's actually useful and is going to provide a great user experience for the marketer. You know, they focus on what's interesting, what's pretty to look at, how do we have more graphs, more metrics. And all that is great, but is it actually useful? I mean, do I really need 50 confusing graphs when all my decisions are really made from 5 or 6 really useful graphs? So that's my philosophy driving LTV Numbers. Be useful. And when done right, I believe LTV analysis is the most useful analysis there is for growing your business. So let's talk about why that is. Why LTV? Well, the common thread that I've seen is the magic question around scaling is, how much can I spend to acquire a customer? If you can answer that question better than anybody else, you will have an unfair advantage over all of your competition. But this question is notoriously difficult to answer because it goes so deep, right? How much I can spend to acquire a customer? Is that on a ad account level? Is that on an ad campaign level, ad set, creative level? What about doing CPA stuff with email and working with affiliates? There's all these different forms of that question. So if you really want to answer it correctly, you need to be able to have a very deep level of insight into the numbers. This is something that historically has been very challenging to get. The other thing is that it's not a fixed number, right? When a customer comes in and buys for the first time, they're worth a certain amount of money on that day, their day zero. But over time, as they buy more products on the back end, that value goes up and up and up over time. So the value of how much you can spend is not a fixed number. There's a curve that these customers follow, and their value grows along that curve. So it's a matter of, can I see what the customer is worth at every single day? Day 0, day 7, 14, 30, 60, 90, 180, 365. And then decide, where am I willing to break even in case I lose money on the front end, and set my CPA as high as I can so I can spend more money on traffic than anybody else. If you can do that, then you are going to win. But the problem is, getting this LTV line is very complicated. And not only that, but like I said, there's the campaign level, the ad set level, the creative level, individual emails that you're sending out. So there's really an LTV line for every single one of these things, right? There's an LTV line for each campaign that you're running, for each ad set, for each ad, for each funnel, for each product. You have all these different LTV lines, but no one is able to see them. So my goal with LTV Numbers is to make that possible, to show you customer and also lead lifetime value over time for any length of time, broken down by funnel, product, ad campaign, ad set, ad, affiliate, or pretty much any traffic breakdown that you want. If you have these graphs, now we have something that's really useful, right? Because we can see the full picture and the full story. So I came across this because I used to build funnels for a lot of different businesses, wide ranging, some small, some big. I got to work with some really big brands that I was very fortunate to be able to work with. And they kept coming to this problem over and over again. They would look at their average order value, for example, but that was the only number that they really knew. So if that's the only number that you know, then that's all you can really responsibly spend. But if you have LTV, then you can see, what are the customers worth on day 30, 60? Maybe I'm willing to spend that much to acquire the customer because I know I'm going to make that money back in the long run. So after hearing this question over and over again, I finally decided I should build a solution. And that's what led me to build LTV Numbers. So that's the background. That's how I got to where I am right now. So I'm going to jump into a demo, give you a full walkthrough, and we'll go from there. All right, here we are inside of LTV Numbers. So in this demo, I'm going to give you a brief walkthrough of what LTV Numbers does and how it works. And if it looks interesting to you, then you can schedule a demo call and we can go into more depth and detail about what it does and how it can be useful for your business. So I just want to reiterate that this tool was designed for decision making. It was designed for the business owner or the marketer who shouldn't need to be a data scientist to make informed scaling decisions. That's what this tool and the experience was really built around. So we're going to talk about the graphs in just a minute, but let's start out by talking about the context for the analysis, because this is really what drives everything. So up here we have the ability to select a particular date range. In this case, we're looking at October through January. Then we have filters, breakdowns, and attribution. So as I've mentioned before, to really do LTV analysis the right way, you need to be able to break down the data in a lot of different ways. You need to be able to see things at different levels of detail. So with that in mind, you can see in this breakdown selector, we have these UTM values, which we use to group our traffic sources. Then we have funnel, product, country, and affiliates. So this is what's going to give us the ability to see LTV broken down by Facebook versus YouTube versus Instagram versus email, or ad campaigns, or ad sets, or ad creatives, to see our funnels head-to-head, our products head-to-head, or our affiliates head-to-head. These breakdowns are what give us the ability to do that. So in addition to being able to break the data down by any of those things, we can also filter the data by any of those things. So for example, I just want to look at my Facebook traffic, or I just want to look at sales from one particular funnel or product. That's what we can do up here. Then lastly, the attribution. This is where we can switch between customer attribution or lead attribution. And what that means is, when do we start tracking LTV? For a customer, it would be on the customer's first purchase. And for a lead, it would be when someone opts in for the first time. They didn't necessarily have to buy anything. Okay, so with these capabilities, the level of analysis you can do and the combinations are pretty much endless, right? Between filtering and breaking down, you can see pretty much whatever you want. Okay, so let's talk about the graphs. Starting with the lifetime value graph, what I believe is the holy grail graph. So many businesses are looking for this graph, but so few actually have it. But now you can see it because you found LTV Numbers. And this is extremely powerful for decision making. I truly believe that if the entire tool was just this graph, it would still be more than worthwhile, because this is a graph that nobody really has. It's a true unfair advantage for you in your scaling efforts. Okay, so what does it actually show? This is showing lifetime value day by day, right? So you can see starting at day 0, a customer is worth $49. As the days go by, we hit day 30, they're worth $71. 60, it keeps growing and growing and growing, right? This shows you what that customer is worth every step of the way. And in this particular case, on this data set, we're looking at over 5,000 customers worth of data. So this is saying each customer is worth this much as the days go by. So if you're trying to figure out how much you can spend to acquire a customer, this is the graph that you really need to see. Because if you're operating like everybody else, you probably just know maybe an average order value or a number like that. But if you can see this, you might say, well, a customer's worth $49 on day 0, but by the time we hit day 30, they're worth $70. So I would be happy to spend $50 or $60 to acquire that customer because I know that the value is going to back out over time. If you don't have this graph, then you're just operating based on maybe this very first number right here, and you don't know what it looks like on the back end. So you can be the business that knows, hey, I can spend $70, $80 to acquire a customer when everyone else is scared to spend more than $50. You know this, it's an unfair advantage for you. So another thing that a lot of people don't think about when it comes to lifetime value is where the customers are at in their journey. So what I mean by that is there are some customers that bought from you yesterday and they're only 1 day old. And there's others that bought from you 90, 180 days ago, right? Those customers are farther along in their journey. So what this graph here on the bottom shows is some additional context for how many customers have made it to that day in their lifetime value journey. And as you can expect, as time goes by and there are more and more customers that bought more recently, there aren't as many customers that have made it that far along in their journey. So by the time we hit, in this case, day 140, you can see we're only left with the 30 customers that have been around for 140 days. Now, why is this so important? Well, there are a lot of tools that when they show you LTV, probably just as a single number, it's hard to tell what that number really means. And that's because everyone's at a different point in their journey. This bottom is providing you really important context to know, is the number on top actually meaningful? Because if there are only a few customers that have made it to that point, the number really doesn't carry all that much weight. Whereas if you look at the bottom and say, all 5,000 customers have made it to day 30, day 40, then you know that the number that you see up on the top is actually a meaningful number. This is really key context that nobody else has. And it really makes a huge difference for interpreting the lifetime value data. And that's why we include it. Because as you'll see, a big part of what we try and do is tell you the full story. What's actually going on and why did it happen the way that it did? Okay, the next thing that you can do on this lifetime value graph, it's centered around this new metric that we created called lifetime revenue. So notice these numbers right now. So the numbers are about $48 LTV, goes up to about 70. I'm going to switch this over to LTR, which stands for lifetime revenue, and the graph's going to look a bit different. So now you can see the graph goes from about 265,000 up to 400,000. So what does lifetime revenue actually mean? Lifetime revenue is tracking for these 5,000 customers that came in, how much revenue do they generate up front? And then as they make back-end purchases over time, how much lifetime revenue is generated as a result of those back-end purchases. So that's why you can see up front, these 5,000 customers spent $265,000. But as they made back-end purchases, that number grows and grows and grows. So here's why this is so key. Lifetime value is a metric that often gets compared to CPA, right? How much is one customer worth versus how much does it cost to acquire that customer? Well, what's the number that you would compare it to, let's say, ad spend? So if you spent $100,000 on ads, how much money, how much revenue do you actually generate from that ad spend? Well, that's exactly what LTR is for. LTR shows you how much money do you make from that group of customers over time. So this is really the key metric to determine a true ROI, right? Because ultimately in the long term, ROI is not really about how much you make up front. That's a component of it. But if you know your 30-day LTR, That's how much total revenue has actually been generated from those customers you acquired. So let's say you spent $300,000 to acquire these customers. Well, if you didn't have LTV numbers, you'd look at this and go, man, we lost about $35,000 on the customers that we acquired. But when you have access to this data, you look at the 30-day LTR and you say, wow, we spent $300,000 to acquire those customers and we've already made $88,000 in profit by day 30. Now think about how powerful that is. When you can see this, it completely transforms the way that you make your ad spend decisions. It completely changes your perception over what's working and what's not. And ultimately, knowing this is going to allow you to spend a lot more money to acquire the customers because you know that the numbers back out. So lifetime revenue is a huge asset, and you can think of it like lifetime value is to CPA as lifetime revenue is to ad spend. Those are the numbers that you can compare head to head. Okay, so before we move on, I actually want to jump into a breakdown because it's going to make the data a little bit prettier and a bit more interesting. So far we've been looking at all of the customers, right? But let's jump into a breakdown by funnel. So you can think of this breakdown as all of the individual sales funnels that you have. This is going to show you one lifetime value line for each of those funnels. So look what we have now. Before we just had one line, now we're looking at 5 different lines. Let me scroll down a bit so you can see. So now we have one lifetime value line for each individual funnel. I'm going to switch this back to LTV. So now you can see for each of my individual funnels, what does my lifetime value look like? And keep in mind that in this case, we're doing a breakdown by funnel, but these lines could just as easily be one line for each ad campaign, for each ad set, for each ad creative. It just depends on what breakdown you specify. But funnel is a good one just to get a basic idea for what's going on. So look what we have now. 5 different lines for LTV. We can compare these head to head. We can see which funnels are producing the most lifetime value growth. We can see how much customers are worth day by day for each of my individual marketing funnels. This is extremely powerful. And if you're doing a breakdown, let's say for individual ad campaigns, this is showing you how much customers are worth for each campaign. That means you can figure out on a campaign level, am I making my money back? How does this compare to my CPA? Switch over to LTR and see how does this compare to my ad spend for that campaign. These are the real numbers that you need to see to figure out if you're making your money back. Okay? So that's the lifetime value graph. I feel like I could talk about this on and on and on, but as you can see, this graph is extremely powerful for decision making. So let's keep moving. Next up over here, we have a revenue graph, and this one shows you, in this case, we're doing a funnel breakdown for each of my funnels, how much revenue came in on a weekly basis. You can switch the resolution to daily, monthly, quarterly, yearly. And just like with the lifetime value graph, we also provide some context down here on the bottom. So in addition to seeing how much revenue came in on a per funnel basis, you can also see how many orders were placed in that funnel. Right? That way you know how much volume are we actually talking about to produce the revenue that we see on the top. So the next thing that you can do, and this is something that I'm very proud of that I haven't seen anywhere else, is you can also see an average order value over time graph. So what this is showing you, I'm actually going to switch this to monthly. So this is showing you on a month by month basis, what is the average order value for each of my funnels? Now, why is this so important? Well, as you're trying to optimize and improve the AOV of your funnels, maybe you're trying different prices, you're adding in additional upsells, you're trying new prices for those upsells, you're doing things to improve the conversion rate of your upsells. All of these things are going to have an impact on your AOV. And a goal is to try and increase the AOV over time, right, as we try to optimize. Well, this is going to give you the ability to see, broken down by each of your individual funnels, each of your individual ad campaigns, how your AOV is actually changing. And one thing that is enabled when you can do this, that because most people don't have access to this kind of data, they don't think about, your AOV can fluctuate a lot from one ad campaign to the next, even if it's going to the same funnel. And the reason why this is so important is because different ad campaigns might be taking different approaches. You might have different language in that ad. You might be focusing on different benefits in that particular ad. Well, with that being the case, it might resonate more with people that are going to the funnel. And you can actually see that in the AOV. So I've seen plenty of cases where for one funnel you have 5 different ad campaigns. The AOV can vary 20-30% from one campaign to the next. Knowing this kind of breakdown gives you a much deeper level of insight into whether or not that ad campaign is working. Because it's not really just about what's the cost to acquire that customer. It's about how valuable that customer is once they're acquired. And seeing the AOV broken down really allows you to see that. Okay, so next up, we have an acquisition graph. This graph shows you on a weekly, monthly, daily time scale a few different metrics that you can compare head to head that are all centered around acquisition. So in this particular case, we're looking at new customers on the top and repeat customers on the bottom. So let's think about what this really means. We're doing a funnel breakdown here. So this is showing me for each of my funnels, each week, how many new customers am I acquiring versus how many repeat customers am I acquiring. So if you notice nothing else, just take a look at the colors here. See how there's a lot of purple and blue on the top? And down here on the bottom, you see a lot more yellow. Well, this is indicative that the purple and blue funnels do a lot more of customer acquisition, whereas the yellow funnel brings in a lot of returning customers. Maybe it's more of a back-end funnel for me. So when you start thinking about what does this mean for my different traffic sources, there's a lot of different analyses that you can do to see what's the breakdown of the customers that I'm acquiring through each traffic source that I have. Maybe I'm getting a lot of repeat customers from Instagram, but I get a lot of new customers from YouTube. These are the things that you're going to be able to see. So in addition to new customers and repeat customers, you can also see total customers, total number of payments, which would include subscription payments if you have those, total number of orders, or total number of leads. So you have a wide variety of things that you can see on this graph. All right, and before we continue, I want to look down here at this table. So this table is a summary overview of the key metrics, and it acts as your controller for the graphs above. So we're doing a funnel breakdown here, and so you can see a list of all of our different funnels. And you can see how the different colors correspond with the different colors on the graph, right? So right now this table is sorted by new customers, so which funnel brought in the most new customers. And it's going to show you how many new customers were brought in. It's going to summarize the LTV at key days, 0, 30, 60, 90. Those are the same numbers that you would see up here on the graph. Then it's also going to show you LTR, so the lifetime revenue. That would be the total revenue generated by this group of new customers. Then over here we have the total number of customers that came in. So that includes new customers who are making their first purchase, and then also returning customers. How many total orders have been placed, what the AOV is for those orders, the revenue produced by those orders, and then also the total revenue. This would include any rebills from subscription payments that originated inside of this funnel. So this table acts like your controller. So with that in mind, I can turn on and off the lines that I want to analyze. Maybe I just want to take a look at these two. So that way I can quickly focus on the things that I'm actually interested in seeing. Right? That way you don't always have to look at a whole bunch of different lines all at the same time. Maybe you just want to look at one funnel in particular. Maybe you want to look at a group of funnels. Whatever it might be, you can compare them head to head. And the same goes for traffic source, based on whatever breakdown you want to do. You can choose the ones that you want to turn them on, and then you can see all this information broken down. Okay, so we've talked about lifetime value, revenue, average order value, and acquisition. I'm going to jump over to a different data set for this last graph here. So the last graph is called time to first order. This shows you how long does it take for a lead to become a customer. How long does it take that lead to place their first order? So this is extremely useful if you do anything on the lead gen side, where someone might be opting in and then later on placing their first order, whether it's through an email follow-up sequence, or maybe you just bring them onto your broadcast list, and then ultimately from a broadcast email they make a purchase. So in this case, we're doing a UTM medium breakdown, which is a way of breaking down your traffic, and you can see down here in the list, we have Facebook, YouTube, email, different traffic sources. So this is showing for each of these individual traffic sources, how long does it take that lead to turn into a customer? Very valuable for seeing how effective your email follow-up is, for seeing how effective you are at bringing new leads into customers, right? Okay, so that covers the graphs that we have. As you can see, everything is focused around giving very to-the-point, insightful, decision-making based data, right? Okay, so the next thing that you can do, and this is in the spirit of really deeply answering the question, why does my LTV evolve the way that it does? Well, we can see these LTV lines, and these are very useful. Already this gives us a lot of information that we don't have before. But the next question that comes up is, why did my LTV go up in the way that it did? So let's say I'm just looking at this funnel, for example. Well, my LTV went from $34 to about $60. Why did it do that? And that's where we've created something called path analysis. So if you go to this row in the table, you click on this right here, and it takes us into this new experience called path analysis. What path analysis does is it breaks down the back end for all of these customers. So we're looking at 2,500 customers here, and we can see their LTV line. Well, the next thing that we want to be able to see is what drove the LTV up, right? So now this graph over here on the right, which is showing lifetime value gain, is showing you on the back end how much lifetime value was added day by day. All right, so you can see on day 0, the same day that they're becoming customers, they're making additional purchases on the back end. Maybe you're selling them something on the order confirmation page or in a follow-up email, because we're adding $11 in lifetime value on the first day. If you didn't know this, then you would think that these customers were worth $11 less than they actually are, because maybe you're just looking at the average order value. This is showing you 11 additional dollars is coming from the back end. Then as you keep continuing along the days, you'll see day 1, we add another $5. We have a bunch of purchases sprinkled in through here, and then a big spike here on day 19. Maybe there's some sort of email follow-up sequence that drives people to make that purchase, and that's why you see the spike. So once again, in the spirit of providing context, the bottom shows you how many payments happened on that day, so you know how many payments went into producing the lifetime value gain that you see up here on the top. So this is already very cool to be able to see, but it goes another level deeper, right? Because this is when the lifetime value gain actually happened and how many payments drove it. But what funnels produce that gain? What products produce that gain? What traffic sources produce that gain? So that's where the back-end breakdown comes into play. So if I do a funnel back-end breakdown, now all of a sudden we get to take this graph that was here before and then break it down into all the different funnels that produce that gain. So what we're seeing now is all of my back-end funnels, right? Because we came in through funnel 326, and now we're looking at back-end funnels. So what we can see right away is funnel 656 produces a ton of our back-end growth, right? It drives our lifetime value up by an additional $30 from where it started. It's responsible for $77,000 in back-end revenue. Of the 2,500 customers that came in on the front end, 78 bought from this funnel. And if we look up here at the graph at the dark blue line, we can see all of these purchases on the back end came from that particular funnel. So what this shows you right away is funnel 656 is doing a lot of work to drive lifetime value on the back end. And in addition to that, we can see the other funnels that are driving that growth, right? And this table is sorted by lifetime value gain. We can see the revenue breakdown, how many customers bought from each funnel, how many orders were placed, how many total payments, and then on average, how many days after the front end do they make that purchase. So what this means is, on average, it takes about 8.6 days for a customer to buy from this funnel on the back end. So this gives you a good sense for, is this a back-end funnel that people purchase from very quickly after they become a customer? Or is this something that maybe takes 30, 60, 90 days for people to warm up to? It gives you a good sense for how long it really takes. So with this breakdown, we can see front-end customers, front-end revenue, and then the lifetime revenue that ultimately gets produced. And that lifetime revenue comes from all of these different back-end funnels that drive the value up. So in addition to doing a funnel breakdown, we can do a product breakdown. So that way you can see the individual products driving lifetime value growth. All the same breakdowns and information is available there. You could switch over to do a traffic source breakdown. So now you'd be looking at different traffic sources on the back end that are driving lifetime value, so like Facebook, email, and YouTube. All these analyses are easily available to you here. So it should be pretty clear at this point that the level of depth of the LTV analysis is unmatched, right? You can take any group of customers with any set of criteria and figure out how many came in, what does their lifetime value curve look like, and then when their lifetime value grows, why did it grow? What drove that growth? Which funnels was it? Which products? Which traffic sources? Put all these things together and it's the deepest LTV analysis that you are going to find. Okay, so we've covered all the different graphs. We've talked about path analysis. We've talked about this table. Just a couple other quick points. You can change the table to show you a few different views on the columns. So here's a detailed LTV view, so you can see it takes LTV for each of our different funnels, shows you day 0, 7, 14, 21, 30, all these key different days that you might be interested in seeing. And then we can do the same exact thing for LTR. All right, what is the LTR at all of these different key days for each of my funnels? Okay, so that covers it for the functionality of LTV numbers. As you can see, it's extremely powerful and goes into a lot of detail. And the analyses are really only limited by the way that you set up your traffic sources. So you can see LTV for pretty much anything that you want. And once you have that set up, you can go deeper and deeper and deeper and see lifetime value for really what's actually going on behind the scenes to drive that growth. So if this looks interesting to you and you want to learn more, then you can book a call to have a demo and a walkthrough. We can talk about the specifics of your business. You will have an opportunity to sign up for LTV numbers on that call, but just know that you won't get any pressure from us. Okay, we're just here to see if we can help. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you found this useful. As you can see, it's some pretty powerful stuff. I really look forward to talking to you and helping out your business. Thanks for watching.